Extending the Brexit transition period, Scottish Conservative MPs say they're concerned it might prolong membership of the Common Fisheries Policy. A number of Scottish Conservative MPs have expressed concern about the idea of extending the Brexit transition period if it means staying in the Common Fisheries Policy for longer. Theresa May says she's open to extending the period after we leave, but before rules change by months. The Scottish Government says it's a sensible idea, but that it must deliver a better deal. From Brussels, here's our political correspondent, Nick Erdley.
This is a sight we won't be seeing for long. Theresa May arriving at the top table of European leaders this morning. But how long will the UK continue to mirror Europe's rules? Mrs May says it could be longer than we thought.
A further idea that has emerged, and it is an idea at this stage, is to create an option to extend the implementation period for a matter of months, and it would only be for a matter of months.
She hopes that option will never be used, but if we get there, it could provide more space to finalise a trade deal down the line. But as ever, this process is far from simple. What Theresa May says here can often be hard to sell at home. A longer implementation period would probably be more money into the EU budget, and it could mean it takes longer for the UK to leave the Common Fisheries Policy. I've spoken to a number of Scottish Tories today who are uncomfortable with that idea. One told the BBC, "I don't see how we can support it." Brexiteers too have raised objections at Westminster, piling more pressure on the government. But on camera, others are loyal.
We've got to look at the circumstances where this would kick in. The idea would be that if we're going through the final negotiations, the details, and something's being held up in Europe, i.e. the Latvian Parliament or something like that wasn't agreeing to the final looking forward agreement, then they could extend it by a couple of months to make sure that the whole thing didn't fall apart. I don't think that's keeping us in Europe for a long time. I think that would be common sense. But what the Prime Minister and the government's clearly focused on is getting a deal this autumn, and that's certainly what my colleagues and I are trying to support as well.
The Scottish Government has previously supported extending the process. Today, though, it says it must be for a reason.
If there is to be extra time, it can't be time for nothing. It can't be time spent just trying to find another fudge. That time would have to be used constructively, for example, to move towards a single market and customs union solution, to go back from where the impasse is and to find the right solution.
New approaches aren't on the table in Brussels for now. The next few weeks will be crucial in seeing whether they emerge, and just as importantly, whether they have enough support at home.
Well, Nick is still in Brussels for us this evening. Is it possible to say, Nick, where the Brexit process stands then tonight after this summit?
I think it's down but not out. Clearly this summit isn't the milestone on the road to a Brexit deal that the timetable suggested it should be. There is no deal ready to be signed at the moment. There's still huge frustration that the sides don't have an agreement on that issue of the Irish border. But at the same time, there's a quiet determination from European leaders that this process goes on. We heard that tonight from the European Council President, Donald Tusk. He said, as things stand, there isn't a reason to call further meetings to discuss Brexit, but he did say he stood ready to do so when decisive progress is made. So Theresa May will head back to London tomorrow, pleased that this process is still continuing. But let's face it, with huge challenges, both to reach something with Brussels that she can swallow, but at the same time, something that her party at home can accept.
Thanks very much, Nick Erdley.
Britain post-Brexit, the Prime Minister is heavily criticised for suggesting we could remain tied to the EU for longer than planned. At the summit in Brussels, Theresa May indicates she would consider an extension to the transition period in order to reach a deal.
We are not standing here proposing an extension to the implementation period. What we are doing is working to ensure we have a solution to the backstop issue in Northern Ireland that enables us to, which is currently a blockage to completing the deal.
The EU says it's open to the idea, but MPs at Westminster say it will cost Britain billions. Good evening and welcome to the BBC News at 6. The Prime Minister says she is convinced that the UK can achieve a good deal with the European Union on Brexit, despite the EU summit in Brussels ending with no sign of a breakthrough. The major sticking point remains the issue of the Irish border. But Theresa May has drawn sharp criticism from all sides of her party for suggesting that she would consider extending the amount of time that the UK remained tied to the EU and its rules and regulations in order to help secure a deal. And that could cost the UK billions more. Well, our political editor Laura Koonsberg is in Brussels for us tonight. Laura.
Sophie, this was not going to be the moment that all the problems of Brexit were magically solved. But Theresa May did come here with a whisper of a new proposal. But as she discovered yet again, when there's a hint of compromise in Brussels, there's big conflict at home.
The longer this rolls on, the more things stay the same. Europe's leaders frustrated in Brussels when Theresa May arrives with not that much to say. But listen carefully, very carefully, there comes a hint of compromise.
A further idea that has emerged, and it is an idea at this stage, is to create an option to extend the implementation period for a matter of months, and it would only be for a matter of months. But the point is that this is not expected to be used.
A tiny clue, but a big change. What she means is we might stick longer with the status quo after Brexit. Theresa May has reason to look a bit nervous about that. Longer in the departure lounge, in transition, would mean longer following EU rules without a say. And maybe these leaders would charge a bill of billions for the privilege too. They don't look worried. Instead of late-night brinkmanship, there was late-night beer drinking for Angela Merkel, Emmanuel Macron and a select band of other EU leaders last night. But will the idea of a longer transition make it easier to say Auf Wiedersehen to the UK? Maybe.
If the UK decided that an extension of the transition period would be helpful to reach a deal, I am sure that the leaders would be ready to consider it positively.
Maybe not.
The key element for a final deal is on the British side.
Number 10 believes, as Angela Merkel says, where there is a will, there should also be a way. Even if the idea quickens the pace in Brussels, it might get stuck at home.
We're negotiating in good faith. We'll keep our nerve.
The Cabinet's nervous.
It's very nice to see you. I'm just heading.
And whether former Leavers or former Remainers, it has really riled already fractious Tory MPs.
The most common phrase to me is just get on with it. And if this means more prevarication, more delay, not bringing compression to the Commission to actually make decisions, it opens up the horror of very large sums of money possibly being handed over because we get into the next European spending round. So it's pretty unattractive.
She knows her party may well try to kill her plans, but right now she hasn't many ways out.
There's a lot of hard work ahead. There will be more difficult moments as we enter the final stages of the talks, but I'm convinced that we will secure a good deal that is in the interests of the UK and of the European Union.
You've been straining in the last couple of years to keep all the promises that you have made, whether to Brexiteers, to former Remainers, to Northern Ireland or to business. Ultimately, you are going to have to disappoint someone. Who is it going to be?
Yeah. What we have done as a government is put forward a set of proposals that deliver on the vote of the British people, that would ensure that we would end free movement, end the jurisdiction of the European Court of Justice, end sending vast amounts of money to the European Union every year, come out of the common agricultural policy, out of the common fisheries policy, but also protect jobs and livelihoods and protect the integrity of the Union of the United Kingdom.
Theresa May has survived this far by making different vows to different sides, both here and at home, promising to keep the UK together, saying that trade won't be damaged even though we're leaving our biggest trading partner, saying she wants to take the best bits from Brussels without hurting the EU. But with time really running out, perhaps reality is emerging. It's just about impossible to keep all of those pledges. And if she breaks those promises, ministers are all too aware, that might break her.
It might be another 2 months before Theresa May's back here, if her compromises and her leadership gets that far. Laura Kunsberg, BBC News, Brussels.
So let's have a closer look at this issue. The UK is due to leave the European Union on March the 29th next year. That's when the so-called transition period would begin. During this time, the UK's relationship with the EU will stay largely the same. It's currently scheduled to end on the 31st of December 2020. The government hopes by that point the new trade arrangements with the EU will be in place. The suggestion of lengthening that transition period, however, would have implications. It could include Britain having to contribute to the next EU budget, and that could run to several billions of pounds. And that's what's made a lot of MPs angry, as our political correspondent Ben Wright reports.
When she gets back home, Theresa May will find no refuge from the criticism flying at her from all quarters of the Tory party. The Brexiteers are furious at the idea of a longer transition.
Well, I think it's a mistake and potentially a very costly one, because we would be into a new multi-annual financial framework, a new budget set without the UK having any vote or any veto, very unlikely to maintain our rebate, and money is scarce.
Trying to buy time with an extension of the transition or implementation period wouldn't resolve the question around the Irish border.
And that's the issue at the heart of this. Both sides have agreed in principle there must be a legal guarantee there can be no new customs or police checks installed on the Irish border after Brexit. More time to sort a trade deal might ensure that guarantee is never needed. But Tory MPs who are not Brexiteers say the idea of a longer transition period is concerning the whole party.
There are ranges of emotion, but what underlies them all is dismay. This dismay at where we seem like we're going to end up. Now, a very large number of Conservative MPs of all persuasions, Leavers and Remainers, government loyalists and, tried and tested rebels, all of them want her to change track.
The mood among Tory MPs is getting ugly. The Brexit deal emerging is angering everybody. For some, another referendum is now needed.
But even if you believe in leaving the EU, what we are heading for cannot be what people expected. And the only way we can resolve this is by giving the public an opportunity to have their own say.
Around 80 Tories share the view of this MP. Although lukewarm about a longer transition, he doesn't want the party's divisions boiling over.
What we have to do is be sensible here, not panic, not blink. We have got to continue to aim for a negotiated settlement which honours the outcome of the referendum.
Even if Theresa May gets a deal with the EU, she then faces the daunting task of getting it through the House of Commons with no majority. And Labour's opposition to the emerging deal seems to be hardening.
The Conservative Party can't agree amongst themselves about what it is that they want to negotiate, and given that they can't agree amongst themselves, they can't negotiate with the rest of Europe.
Number 10 is appealing for cool heads, but there are many here in Parliament who fear Britain is lurching out of the EU without a proper plan, and that is causing alarm. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Well, let's join our Europe editor, Katya Adler, who is in Brussels. Complicated as ever. That was the summit that had been billed as the moment of truth. What is the mood there now, particularly among EU leaders?
Well, we're sticking together and we're sticking to our script. That's been the main message from EU leaders to Theresa May today. They're saying, look, we really want a Brexit deal with the UK, but you are going to have to make more political concessions, particularly over the Irish border. Another message that came through from this summit, loud and clear to the UK, particularly from influential Germany and France, was that the UK should forget trying to soften up or woo EU leaders individually. So we heard from Emmanuel Macron and Angela Merkel that all 27 EU leaders, they said, are united behind their main Brexit negotiator, Michel Barnier. His red lines, they said, are our red lines. That said, EU leaders didn't want to be off-putting. They wanted to be encouraging because they do want a deal. One diplomat said to me here that leaders and their staff felt like they were walking on eggshells at this summit, trying not to say things that would go down badly in the UK. So there's been talk of a deal not just being possible, but probable. But Sophie, clearly we are not there yet.
Katya Adler, thank you.